Hi, what happened? Oh, okay. All right, cool. So,
Gotta go for doing this. I sent you the link in the Zoom chat.
it's all right. I got a link to the YouTube page anyway, so.
That too. Yeah. Cool. But yeah, we got 12 minutes.
Oh, Jake's calling. Hold on a second.
Yep.
Hello? Oh, I am? Oh. Okay, thank you. All right, bye-bye. You there? Yeah, I was on camera. No.
Another 14.
Shabbat Shalom.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Great. Okay. I'm Rabbi Aviva Bass.
And I'm Cantor Jake Harris.
And we're so happy to be here with you tonight. We're going to start tonight with a shofar blast, since we are still in the month of Elul preceding Rosh Hashanah. So we're going to put that on right now.
Yes, it looks like we have our ceremonial show, the video first, and then we'll hear the sound, just to be sure everybody's really ready to hear that shofar, being sure that everybody is ready. So let's roll that video back one more time and see if we can get the sound of the shofar going on. Tekiah. Wow.
Beautiful. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So I'm going to light my Shabbat candles, and I invite all of you, if you have Shabbat candles and you haven't lit them so far, to please join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner Shel Shabbat. Amen. The first song that we will hear tonight, and I hope that you will join with Cantor Jake in singing, is the Yedid Nefesh. Yedid Nefesh means beloved of my soul, and it refers to God. In this song, we are connecting with God, and in the song itself, each of the four stanzas begins with the other letter of God's four-letter Hebrew name. So the first stanza begins with the Yud of Yedid Nefesh, and then we have Hey and Vav and Hey. For time constraints, we're not going to hear all of those four verses, but let's think about God as our beloved, comforting us and bringing us some shelter, especially on this night of 9/11, as we commemorate the 19th anniversary of such a tragic event. We feel God's presence surrounding us and comforting us. Okay.
Yedid nefesh of harachaman part, just sing along with me the wordless melody, the nigun, yai, die, die, die. Yada, die, 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 yada, die, 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 yada, die, 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 yada, die, 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 yada, die, 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 yada, die, 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 yada, die, 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 yada, die, 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 yada, die, 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 yada, die, 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 yada, die, 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 yada, die, 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 die.
Shabbat Shalom. We begin this service with an acknowledgement of all of those who have given donations, those generous people who have given donations to our congregation and to our community. Tonight's Erev Shabbat service is sponsored by Nirit Weiser in memory of her mother, Betty Salkin. Our Saturday, September 12th Shabbat Torah study is sponsored by, again, Nirit Weiser in memory of her mother, Betty Salkin. Also, Lori and Steve Tamber in memory of Max K. Nelson, and Marcia and Robert Altabet in memory of Isaac Altabet. The following donations to the community food pantries are sponsored by Susan Postal Sweet and Jay Sweet in memory of Martin Sweet, Lori and Steve Tamber in memory of Max K. Nelson, David Pechenik in memory of George Strouch, Sam Weinman in memory of his beloved mother, Lillian Weinman, Helene and Sydney Wartell in honor of Helene's birthday. Happy birthday, Helene. And Marilyn Miller in honor of the Hurwitz and Solkoff families. Thank you to all of you who have donated to our community and made it so strong today. We continue now with the Kiddush, which we do over wine or grape juice. So if you have your wine or grape juice ready, you can join me. And if you have a Mishkan Tefillah prayer book, it is on page 122. Vayhi Erev vayhi voker yom hashishi, vayachulu hashamayim v'haaretz v'chotzevam, vayachal Elohim bayom hashvi melachto asher asa, vayishpot bayom hashvi mikol melachto asher asa, vayvarech Elohim et yom hashvi, vaykadesh oto, ki vo shavot mikol melachto, ki vo shavot mikol melachto, asher bara Elohim, asher bara Elohim la'asot, savri l'chaim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron l'maaseh bereshit, ki hu yom techila l'mikra'e kodesh, zecher l'tziat
מצרים, כי בנו בחרת, ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. Amen. L'chaim. And now we turn in our Siddur to page 138 for Dodi.
Ah, yes. Here we are. Page 138 for Dodi. I wasn't sure where I was. I was in the nebulousness of space for a second there. So just a quick thing before we enter into this Dodi, a quick kavanah. I just want everybody, wherever you're at, even if you don't particularly know the melody, the verse, the word we happen to be on during that verse at that particular time, just go ahead and clap your hands, stamp your feet, whatever it is that you're going to do to engage with the music, because it's our sacred obligation to make music for God. So for this Dodi, we're welcoming Shabbat in. And so I welcome you all in to sing with us. So go ahead and get that hand clapping, or that feet stomping. Foot, yes, thank you. Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 1. Shamor v'zachor b'ribor echad, tishmianu el hameyuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, v'shemo tiferet v'letila. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 2. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, tihi mekor haberacha, berosh mekerem nesucha, sofa zeh v'machshava techila. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 5. Hidoreri, kiva orech, umi uri, shir daveri, kevod Adonai elayich nigla. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Verse 9, please rise in body or in spirit. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'tzohola, toch emunei am segola. Boi chala, boi chala. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. All right. right, now we turn to page 146 for the formal call to worship. If you've inclined yourself more directly to the Almighty God during that last verse of Dodi, or if you happen to be standing up like I am right here, right now, go ahead and stay that way. As we sing together, 146, Baruch Hu, with formal call to worship. Yai, dai, dai, yai, dai, 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 yai, dai, 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 dai. Yai, dai, dai, yai, dai, 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 yai, dai, 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 dai. Yai, dai, 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 dai. Yai, dai, 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 dai. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam ha'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam ha'ed. Yai, dai, dai, yai, dai, 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 yai, dai, 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 dai. Please be seated.
We're in an uncertain time right now. 2020 has altogether been, I think, an uncertain time for many of us. And so I turn to page 149 for this interpretive translation of the Ma'ariv Aravim. When we think about that time that's between day and night, and that uncertainty, is it day, is it night? This is what the poet said. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly at the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai, HaMa'ariv Aravim. We turn now to page 150 for Ahavat Olam.
Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha Ahavta, Amcha Ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu v'shochbeinu, kumenu nasiach v'chukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, u'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. עמנו, ובהם נגה יומם ולילה, נגה יומם ולילה. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל, אוהב עמו ישראל.
and 150. We continue with Shema. Please join me. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Please join me in reading on page 155. Love your God with every heartbeat, with every breath, with every conscious act. Keep in mind the words I command you today. Teach them to your children. Talk about them at work. Whether you are tired or you are rested, let them guide the work of your hands and keep them in the forefront of your vision. Do not leave them at the doorway of your house or outside your gate. They are reminders to do all my mitzvot so that you can be holy for God. I am Adonai, your God. I led you out of Egypt to become your God. I am Adonai, your God. Adonai Elohechem Emet. And now we turn to page 162 for the song about Shabbat, the Vishamru, page 162.
שמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורתם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, ledor et merit olam, Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, ledor et merit olam.
We now turn to page 164 and we rise for the tefillah.
Sifatai tiftachu fi agit tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei Hakol, Ve'zocher Chasdei Avot va'imahot, U'mevii geula livnei v'neihem, L'man shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshiach u'Magen. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol atah rav lehoshia. Morid hatal, Mechalkel chaim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofech olim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato lishenei afar. Michamocha Baal Gevurot, Umido Melach, Melech Memit Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'neheman ata lehachayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayei hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kedoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. Shalom, shalom, bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, amen. Oseh shalom, shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, amen. Oseh shalom, shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, amen.
To the time in our service when we think of those who are in need of healing, of mind, body, spirit, or of all three. In a moment, we will look at a list of names of those we know of who are in need of healing. But if you are thinking of someone at this time, it could be you yourself or someone in your own family or someone very far away. But please say those names at this time, at this sacred hour. Marilyn Miller. And so now as we look at this list of names, we send our prayers to all of those who are in need of healing. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Ishebeirach imotenu mekor habracha. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. We now turn to a share of the Torah as we look at this Torah, this shot of our Sefer Torah, Our cantor Jake Harris will read from this week's Parsha, Nitzavim Vayelech.
ויקרא משה אל כל ישראל ויאמר עליהם אתם ראיתם את כל אשר עשה אדוני לעיניכם בארץ מצרים לפרוע ולכל עבדיו ולכל ארצו המסות הגדולות אשר ראו עיניך האותות והמופתים הגדולים ההם ולא נתן אדוני לכם לב לדעת ועינים לראות ואזנים לשמוע עד היום הזה. Moses summoned all the Israelites and said to them, "You have seen all the Lord did before your very eyes in the land of Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his courtiers and his whole country. The wondrous feats that you saw with your own eyes, those prodigious signs and marvels. Yet, to this day, the Lord has not given you a mind to understand, or eyes to see, or ears to hear."
I was in Melbourne, Australia in September 11th of 2001. I was the assistant rabbi of a 2,700 member congregation in Melbourne, Australia, which was my first position since my ordination in the year 2000. My then husband and I had gone to the theater that night. It was nighttime there. We'd seen an opera written by Victor Ullmann and Peter Kien in Theresienstadt during World War II. These men, the composer and librettist, were both murdered in Auschwitz not long after they wrote this opera, but it survived and has been performed in recent years in their memory. In the opera that we saw that night, death was personified and was so upset about a dictator and war that he, Death, decided to take a break and to stop allowing people to die. So instead, the actor singers wandered around like zombies on the stage, lifeless expressions in their eyes and covered from head to toe in white paint. And there was white all over, dust or paint all over the stage of the theater. It was a very eerie opera, especially knowing to whom they were referring as this thinly veiled dictator, who that they were really referring to, the Nazi dictator at the time, and also seeing these white covered zombies, these very eerie singers. When we came home from this opera, it was a little past 11 p.m. Australia time on September 11th. It was a little past 9 a.m. in the US. Our television, which was left on for fear of theft in the area, was turned to CNN. The first plane had just hit. And I remember a news anchor speculating that maybe there was something wrong with the tower and communication to planes after the second plane hit the second tower. I called my mother after that. She was here in Florida, blissfully unaware of anything happening. And I said to her, "Mom, turn on the TV." And she said, "To what station?" And I said, "Any station." And she turned it on and saw what had happened. And neither of us really knew what to say after that. We were just in shock, as everyone was around the world. What I remember most about the next few hours were the images of the people wandering around, looking like zombies, covered in white dust from the explosion of the buildings, and how alike they looked to the zombies in the opera that we'd just seen. It was eerie, unreal. And then I remember sometime in the blur of the next few days, when Congress came together and stood on the steps of the Capitol, Republicans and Democrats alike, and sang "God Bless America." That really hit me. Still makes me emotional to think about. I think if I asked anyone over the age of 30 what they were doing on 9/11, they'd be able to answer. I bet you remember. It seems crystal clear in my mind's eye as I relate it to you now. It was like the assassination of JFK, but for my generation. I missed that one. I was not around for the JFK. But from what I've heard, it was much the same. People remember exactly what they were doing when they heard about JFK's assassination. And people remember exactly what they were doing on 9/11. It seems like yesterday. I can't believe it's been 19 years already. And on the other hand, I feel so much in our world has changed as a result. I mean, I can't even remember when we were allowed to board a plane without taking off our shoes first. We remember these tragedies because they seem larger than life. The horror of them, the way it feels that the rug has been pulled from underneath us, as to the way that life is supposed to be. But today I wondered as I read the news, why don't we remember the good news that happens with as much clarity? Why is it not such a big deal? I dimly remember when Menachem Begin and Anwar Sadat shook hands with Jimmy Carter when signing the peace treaty between the State of Israel and the Arab Republic of Egypt in 1979. I was a young girl, but I remember that it was a happy occasion. But when I asked my parents if they remembered exactly where they were and what they were doing when that treaty was signed, they did not. They could only conjecture. And it was not because it was so many years ago. They remembered exactly where they were with JFK. I wonder why this should be. Perhaps it is because of the news media. They seem to harp on all the bad news, the tragedies and losses, more than they do the good stories. They're kept for a little snippet at the very end of the news day, usually. Or maybe it's a psychological or sociological trait. Are we humans wired to dwell on the negative? Or maybe it's even primal. Perhaps we needed to know the potential dangers surrounding us as early Homo sapiens so that we could protect one another from all the danger surrounding us. But whatever it is, we as Jews now, especially Jews celebrating Shabbat, do not need to do so. Yes, it is 9/11, and we are commemorating that horrific tragedy. And I will be reading some poems before the Mourner's Kaddish to observe this sad anniversary. However, as your rabbi, I must point to some good news today. Actually, great news today involving Israel. If you didn't read or hear of this yet, today, yet another country, Bahrain, has normalized relations with Israel. Today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated, "I am thrilled to announce to you, Israeli citizens, that we will reach a peace agreement tonight with another Arab country, Bahrain, an agreement that joins the historic agreement with the United Arab Emirates. It took us 26 years to go from the second peace agreement with an Arab state, he was referring to Jordan in 1994, to reach a third peace agreement, he referred to the recent agreement with the United Arab Emirates. And it took us not 26 years, but 29 days to go from a third peace agreement with an Arab country to a fourth one. He continued his statement with the words, "There will be more." Bahrain and the UAE are now set to join at the White House for the signing of the Israeli-UAE normalization agreement next week. The date was scheduled so that the Israeli delegation can return to Israel for Rosh Hashanah. These two agreements are helpful from an economic standpoint for Israeli commerce, as well as for peace overall in the region. But in addition, if that were not enough good news, a few days ago, there was other news that is noteworthy. A couple of days ago, the Arab League refused to back the Palestinians in their condemnation of the deal which the United Arab Emirates had made with Israel. The Palestinians had demanded of the Arab League that it denounce the normalization deal between the UAE and Israel. And on September 9th, the Arab League refused to do so. I believe this bodes very well for the state of Israel and the pursuit of peace in the region. Setting aside any comment that could be even construed as having to do with the current administration, the election, let's put that aside for a moment. I will just mention that the US, for its part, has been acknowledged by all parties as a broker in these negotiations, which increases our status in the world as well. So today, with regard to this particular piece of news, I am proud to be an American Jew. And you'll note that my Jewish part of my identity is the central piece of my identity as the noun in that phrase. American is the descriptor, an American Jew. I am hopeful about Israel, and I am going into Shabbat with this news item on my mind. We all remember where we were on September 11th, 2001. But let's all put into our memory banks right now where we are today, as a peaceful negotiation has concluded between Israel and two of its Arab neighbors. Remember tonight, as the Shabbat after the Arab League sided against the Palestinian Authority. I am not denying the sadness of this commemoration of 9/11. And I'm not making any statement about American or Israeli politics. There is much done by both of these countries that is noteworthy of criticism, in my opinion. But tonight, as we celebrate Shabbat and pray for peace, as we have done for millennia, let us add a prayer of gratitude for what we have now witnessed in our lifetime. I invite you to say the Shehachianu prayer along with me as we think about this historic, good, happy moment. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehachianu v'kimanu v'higianu, lazman hazeh. And we all say, Amen. Shabbat shalom. And now we come to the Elenu, a prayer that says that it's about us going out in the world and doing tikkun olam, and we need to continue to do so. We turn to page 586 for the Elenu, and rise, please.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר ראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
And now for a sad recollection as we do think about that time 19 years ago, that tragic day. This poem is by Alden Solovi. It's called At the Hand of Terror 2, a 9/11 memorial prayer. Creator of all, source and shelter, grant a perfect rest under your tabernacle of peace to those who died in the 9/11 attacks on the United States. Remember the works of their hands and the message of their hearts. Grant their families peace and comfort for your name's sake, and for the sake of those who perished. Bring an end to violence and terror speedily in our days. May their memories be sanctified with joy and love. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life, a living blessing in our midst. And now a memorial prayer for 9/11 first responders. God of the selfless, God of the strong and the brave, grant a perfect rest among the souls of the righteous to those who died in service to others because of the 9/11 attacks on the United States. May their dedication to protecting life serve as a shining lamp of love, and the works of their hands bring us all merit in heaven. Bless the souls of all who have died to save others, civilians and professionals, the trained and the untrained, in every age and in every land, men and women who answered the call of honor, duty, and service. May their memories be sanctified with joy and love. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life, a living blessing in our midst. And now Cantor Jake will offer a special musical offering.
So for this somber recollection, I just remember 9/11 because it was a Tuesday. And I remember that because my brother came up to me and he said, Jake, we're not going to Hebrew school today. And we used to have Hebrew school on Tuesdays, so it was definitely an important event for whatever reason. I didn't know the reason at that point of why I didn't go. And I was excited at first when he told me, but then he gave me the reason, and that excitement immediately disappeared and was replaced by fear. And like many Americans, I'm not sure if that fear really ever left my heart. So this setting of Psalm 23 was one that I composed, and it was before teaching Limud Boston. So the only way in which we can combat hatred, the only way in which we can be any sort of antithesis to evil or to terror is with knowledge, and passing that knowledge off to others so that they have better understanding. And the more understanding that we have of one another, the less hate that we'll have. Adonai Roi Lo Echsar Binot Sheyar Bitseni שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפניי שולחן נגד צורריי, דשנת ושמן ראשי כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
So we remember all who perished on 9/11, as well as all of those we are thinking of this week as we prepare to say the Mourner's Kaddish. We remember all of those whose yahrzeits were commemorated this week, but also I'm going to read the yahrzeits from next week as well, because next Friday night is a very special night. It is Rosh Hashanah, and therefore we were not going to be reading all of the yahrzeits on September 18th from the previous week. So this week, the yahrzeits from this week that are on the plaques surrounding the sanctuary are Hyman Aaron, Dan Adler, Neil Bruskin, Benjamin Cohen, Jenny Dan, Todd Epstein, Charles Furstenberg, Rose Gilbert, Phyllis S. Hyman, Jack Mishler, Gladys Musicant, William Pearl, Evelyn S. Stein, Saul Tobin, Stanley G. Wexler, Max Weitz, and Etta Wexler. Others recalled at this time: Isaac Altabet, Samuel Botwinick, Anna Dubitsky, Beatrice Ettis, Karen Kamins, Bernard B. Liu, Florence Marks, Lillian Mitnick, Roberta Petticord, Tama Perlmutter, Norton Rothschild, Gail Rubens, Betty Salkin, George Strauch, Hillel Todrus, Frank Ventry, and Lillian Weinman. And those we recall next week, whose names are on the plaques: Jack Bell, Edward David Berger, Helen Berger, Lena Druch, Eileen Friedman, David Gordon, Eric Herman, Harry Hurwitz, Paula Kamen, Leo Cass, Bernard Lipschitz, Jules Lish, Ida Mickelson, Abraham Mintz, Pauline Rabinovitz, Seymour Raphael, Joseph Shapiro, Ruby Shaw, Beverly Weiss. Others recalled next week: Velma Alamon, Sadie Baymel, Gary Barnett, Ann Emmerman, Molly Geschwind, Ruth Gordon, David D. Green, Eva Brown Greenberg, Morris Greenfield, Rita Oxman, and Martin Sweet. And those whose deaths are more recent: Barbara Panzer. If you are recalling someone whose name I have not read, please say it aloud at this holy time. And now, in memory of all of those who perished on 9/11, all of those who were murdered in Auschwitz, and all of those whose names were just said aloud. We rise in solidarity with mourners everywhere. On page 598, we recite Mourner's Kaddish. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma divarach Yeruteh v'yamlich Malchuteh, V'chayechon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chayeh d'chol Beit Yisrael, V'agala u'v'zman kariv imru, Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevorach le'olam ulol me'almaya. Yit barach v'yishtabach v'yit pa'ar v'yit ramam v'yit naseh. V'yit hadar v'yit aleh v'yit halal Shemei d'kudusha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechamata. Da'amiran ba'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya. V'chayim alenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Hosei shalom b'mromav, huya'aseh shalom. Elenu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru. Amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, and to all who mourn among us in all communities of the world. And let us all say, Amen. Please take a seat as we sing our concluding song.
All right, so our concluding song on page 643. As a musician, as a spiritual musician, as a clergy person, whatever it is you want to call me, I hope that anytime you just call me Jake. But when we're deciding on a mood or a tune for a service like tonight, with what we remember, with what we're holding, sometimes it's difficult to find the right mood with that melody that's going to get us in the mood to go forward with the rest of our night and the rest of Shabbat. Page 643. Not it. Not it. 647. There we go. 647 at the bottom. Ozi v'zimrat ya vayhi li lishua. So we'll do a couple rounds of the words, and if you don't want to sing the words, just sing Yai Dai Dai, but remember all those who need to be remembered. Those that were once close to us that are no longer with us. And remember the joy that life brings us. And the reason why it's so painful to think about those that we've lost is because of the joy that we know life can bring. And Shabbat is one of those moments of pure joy. So let us have that as we go out tonight, in the memory of those that are no longer with us, to bring us that joy and experience Shabbat's joy with us. Ozi v'zimrat ya vayhi li lishua. 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 Ozi v'zimrat ya vayhi li Shabbat Shalom.